Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's exercises we will be extracting um, data, drawings based from our shed roof. So I'll let you look at our PDF file that we will be including with the video. And so today we will be looking at exporting shop drawings using different features. So one which is here we're using the shortcuts, it's a semicolon in order to export views and scale them to fit in a page. And there is another one where it's using colon. We will see the difference. And then we have a tool um, more sophisticated to save views and sections and extract all the views and sections quickly uh, once it's set. So we will be looking at how to set the export solid to extract these views. Then we will be looking at our CLT plugin that is available to you for setting direction arrows and hoisting points. So let's start. Let's go back to our 3D model. And for us to be able to um, load the views, we need a 2D file. So I'll just call it S7 and I'll pick the Imperial English init file. So once it's done, let's go in a view. Let's do an X view. And here it's I'm gonna extract different views and it's more like a global view of our model. So I don't really need, you know, all the bells and whistle. I'm gonna hide these connector axes and eventually even the grid lines. So I do Control A and then T for type, and I can press the multiplication button or the star on the numpad in order to hide these guys. So then I go in an X view and let's start by pressing semicolon. So as soon as you press semicolon, it's asking for a clipboard number. Again, you don't have to press 1. I'm going to override clipboard number 1. That's the default clipboard. I just right click and now it writes the clipboard. Now I can go to our 2D application, our 2D module. Then I can paste the result by pressing 3 and I right click. Oh, in the meantime, I just need to launch our um, small application for you to see what I'm doing. It's going to be a lot easier. So here, this is our first drawing. And you see it's already, my view is included in my printing frame, including as well a title block. The title block is already set with the project data that we entered together at the very beginning. And you see this is filling automatically. So we'll look at how to create these different layouts. You also see that you're getting production numbers. So, and the production numbers, if I switch back in Cadwork 3D, are not visible. So this is because it's automatically set. It's already preset. If I click on the attributes display settings here on the gears, and I look at the 2D export with layout, I see that it's exporting production numbers. I could add many different attributes here, all the attributes listed. Then I have, when you have lots of drillings, when exporting fabrication drawings, it can combine like connector axes and drilling axes to merge them and not have the the same data over and over. So you could set this and set a distance. So all the connector axes and drilling within a foot will be combined or merged together. Then we have the text location. We've already seen that before. What's new in here is the label location. So when you have too many labels close to each other, you could optimize labels and you could add a leader. So only when necessary. So when leader labels are too close to each other, then we will be getting a leader, or all of them could be getting could get a leader. Then for the text orientation here, this is not new. It will be along the length axis. So if we look at the result here, we see this is set along the beam length. Now, eventually we have too many numbers. So because we have like panels, and we have two panels lining up here. There is one probably 22 and one 24. So you see it's a little bit awkward and we don't know which one is which. So there is a way to avoid this, and we can make sure that um, only the text or the parts that we are seeing will have production numbers. So what I can do, I can activate parts for which I'd like to see the production numbers, and then I can switch back into my view. And then when pressing semicolon, now there is a question. It's asking if we want to export all attributes only on activated parts. So we say yes and right click. And now, even though the production numbers are not displayed, it's asking me if I want to export them. I could say no, and then I wouldn't see any numbers, but here you see the default answer is yes. I can just right click and then go back to my 2D. I can eventually undo this here, or let's just paste the results so you will see the difference. So here there are no overlapping production numbers because it's simply like I have only the parts with that are in the foreground with the production numbers. So here it's all good. I can continue and I could export an axonometric view. So same thing, semicolon, right click. So you can choose the appropriate um, view and then export and paste. Here I'm again seeing all the production numbers because I did not activate any parts, and you see we've got some leaders sticking out the parts. So the leaders can always, like the text and leaders can always be moved if needed. You could always also delete some production numbers if you want to. Here in this case, eventually we would only keep like the panels on top and eventually not include the the glue lamps. So that's another view that I could export. I could activate all my panels, Control A. Um, let's say M for material. I can hide. I want to hide the splines as well. And now I can create export the data. So again, semicolon and export. So basically what you see is what you will be exporting. So here again, 3 and left click, you see it's always the top left corner that is activated. And here I have my drawing. You see also that all these surfaces are hatched. And actually, we probably see better if we switch in white with a white background. And I'm gonna also in the settings under vision, I'm gonna uncheck the gray layers so we will see this better. You also see that here the scale is slightly different. Here it's 3/16 of an inch equals a foot. And here, because we have the panels, it's taking a little bit more space. It's an eighth of an inch equals a foot. So it's automated. The scale is automated in order to fit the page. Now, let's look a little bit closer at the settings. How do we get the title block and the information, and how we can edit the title block, how we could create a new layout. So if we go to export shop drawings, this is where you will be finding 2D export with layout. You click on the gears, you see the shortcut here, semicolon. You click on the gears and the configuration window pops up. By the way, if you use this function on a regular base, you can go, let me close this, you can go to help, function keys F1 to F12, and you can customize and assign F keys uh, to certain functions. So for instance, here it's Control F6. This is my configuration for the 2D output. So that's a lot quicker now. If I press Control and F6, it opens this window right away. And we see currently we are using a layout file. So that's the layout file in Imperial for version 28. That's the version we are currently using. Then if I click on the list here, on my output frame, I see that I'm currently exporting with a horizontal, so a landscape 11 by 17, a ledger page, and I have 4 different options. It's actually for the title block. So the title block, we have a short and a long and skinny title block. It's horizontal or vertical. So let's try here a vertical title block. So I click apply, OK. The exact same uh, axonometric view, semicolon, and you will see now I have a different title block, and here there is not as much space, so the scale is a little bit different. So here the scale is at an eighth of an inch equals a foot. Great, so let's go back here and again Control F6 to look at the settings. Um, then we have another tab for representations. So currently when exporting, I'm exporting with hidden lines and hatchings. So we will look how you can set the hatchings based on the material. We see that it's exporting attributes. So I could uncheck the box and then it won't export the production numbers or whatever you've selected. And then elements and attributes are saved in different groups. So we will look at that later on. And then for the scale is automatic in order to fit the page, but it's only using scales listed in here. So these are imperial scales. So you see a quarter of an inch equals a foot, half an inch equals a foot, etc. And then for the labeling, it's currently, well, we find the same window we looked at previously. it's our for the labels or the attributes display, we see exactly what I had before. Then for smoothing, it's when importing files from different software where you have kind of a mesh with lots or discretization with lots of segments, Cadwork can remove these segments when it creates a certain angle between the faces. So that's in our case here, that's not really relevant. It's not used. Now let's go back to the settings and let's look at our 2D file. So our layout file, and I need to explain a little bit how this is done. I'm just going to delete this one because I'm going to create a new one. Um, so on the left, sorry, on the right, we have existing layout. So here, as I mentioned before, we have four different ledger, 11 by 17, with four different um, title blocks. So we see, let's look at the one we used originally, that was the ledger. So we see that we have different frames. So there is always a printing frame. Let me lasso and hide forward slash the rest so we can focus on this. Actually, I also need the text. The text is really important because the text is the one that is listed in our settings. That's this text I was seeing and able to pick to choose this layout. So we see here we have a ledger frame, so it's a printing frame. I'm gonna hide it. The button for is the multiplication button or the star on the numpad. And here I'm gonna switch to um, the black background by pressing Alt W, because then we have some hidden um, frames, and they are hidden because they are white and they have the color 256. So whenever you create a layout file, anything that has color 256 won't be exported and won't be visible when pasted in 2D. So you see here there is a frame inside here. This is actually our frame to place the drawing. So the drawing will has to match and has to fit into this frame. So we are not using the bottom here because, well, we have the title block. So here it's not ideal. A skinny title block would be better. You can maximize the space. Um, so anyway, we have uh, a frame that is placing and scaling the drawing. This is important. You need this one. Then you need also another one for the export zone. So it's it should be um, yeah, at least matching the printing frame or bigger. That's okay. But these frames we don't want to see them when exporting. So if I go back to my 2D, what I see is, well, my printing frame as well as the frame with the rounded corners. So this is something I see here, and this is something I can physically pick, and it's a line. It's actually a surface with color number 8, so it's black when printing. Then we have the title block, and the title block you can edit. A title block is simply a bunch of lines um, and text. So the text is actually, we see we have text macros, and as soon as you see like a number sign and preceded by a number, you know that this is a macro. You cannot edit that text because this text, like project name, project number, is coming automatically from the project data. So you see project name, shed roof. Now if I go back to my shop drawing, we see that indeed the text in our layout file, so 3020, is replaced by what I have in my project data. So same thing for all of these. So the name, number, architect, customer, designer, scale, these are all coming from the they are all coming from the project data. There are also other macros that you can use, and you will find all the texts available on the left. So you see here project data, you have the geolocation. So geolocation is coming also from the project data, but under project location. So this is what I searched on Google, and I feel that in automatically based on the pin, I placed it at the right location. Okay, so then I can continue. We also have some scale, some macros for the scale and for the date. So you can simply, and actually we should create a new layout. So let's take this one as an example. So I select it and then I copy it 6 and I'm gonna place it here. Then I can easily edit, and instead of ledger, I'm gonna type 11 by 17 and let's say uh, TDI. Oops, it's not TJI. There we go. And that's enough. Then I can eventually bring, or I could stretch this a little bit. So here this is grouped. I can left click on join and I could select these lines and stretch them a little bit in order to put some more space. So 7L for lasso in X, and I'm just gonna put it here and add my different text. So here I'm just gonna add some geolocation. So postal code, city, and then eventually state. That's new in version 27. We've added that. And then I can simply take that text and copy it in here. So 6, and I'm just going to temporarily place it here. Then I could probably match the, so you see here if I activate something and then I can store this in the match function by right clicking, and then I can select this and middle click in order to fit to match the color as well as the font. Well, here it's a little bit ugly. It's not really ideal. I'm just gonna undo modify and I leave it this way. I don't want to spend too much time like fixing this. So I'm just gonna copy that line in X and placing it here. That's good. And now I'm just gonna save it. So Control S to save it, and I'm ready to use it. So let's press again Control F6 to open it, and now I can choose, and we have a new option, a new layout called Ledger TDI. That's perfect. And then I can press semicolon to export. There we go, and paste it here. And let's look at the result. So we see we have a new title block, and actually I have something funny. I deleted the, the layout I did before, and I had a QR code already set up. So I need to explain how you can also include QR codes in your shop drawing exports. So that's actually good. I had forgotten about the QR code. So let's go back, Control F6, and let's go back to our drawing here. I'm not seeing the QR code frame, so this is weird. Where is it? Is it the one? Um, Sorry, I just need to go back to the result. Oh no, that's a different one. Okay. Anyway, I thought I had saved this guy, so that's the one. So now I mentioned something about QR code. So well, it's looks like it's still saving. Oh, there we go. So QR codes. Yeah, and I need to explain a little bit more what we've got on the left here. So we have different frames. So we you can set lines individually by material. So we see here that, for instance, CLT. So this is a list of different material you have. So it should match what you've got in Cadwork 3D. So in the material list you have here. So here we see CLT capitalized. If I bring back my panels, I need to check this is indeed CLT, and we can find out in the results that CLT is exported with a green outline and also green hatchings. So if we go back in here, so these are for lines. Then we have for hidden lines with hatchings, and actually CLT is also defined this way. So, and this is actually the way we are exporting drawings. So here let's try to change the color. So let's change that to red for you to see the difference. So I can go modify line color, put it in red, and eventually we want the hatching to be reddish as well. So modify hatching color red. Okay. We see also that we have two columns. We have one called section and another one called length. So you have um, kind of a like for the end grain, for the end of the beams, for instance, you have a certain um, a different texture or different hatching uh, than the rest of the beam. So depending on it's based on the local axis of your beams, and same thing for panels. So if I look here, we see that the end of the panel has a different hatching than the face and the side of the panel. Okay, now so I've changed that in our layout. Let's look first at the different options. So the text, we've already looked at the different texts. Then for sections, if you export a drawing in a 2D plane, it's gonna be exported with a surface hatched this way. And then also for export solids and container, we have different lines to represent containers and export solids. Then if we continue, we have also for sections, we have options to show how um, different materials are cut or visible in a section. So you could change the way it looks for each individual material. Now, if you need to add more material, it's really easy. You could select a line and then copy it. And if you need, um, like, let's say we have another material that we would like to call grout, what you could do, so if I go here for the hatchings, for the hidden lines with hatchings, I could create a new material and then I need to separate with a semicolon, and then you can write it, um, write the material. So you could have multiple material. Here we see that steel, aluminum, etc. will be represented this way. Oak, maple, and birch this way, etc. So you simply add some material. Note that you shouldn't have the same material multiple times. That doesn't make sense. And it won't work. It's going to actually use the first one it, it's going to find in the list. Then we have also, you can define the logo in the project data, and then you can place the logo in your title block. So here there is an example for the ledger. We have here one example with the arrow pointing or showing the top right corner of your logo. Um, then the next one, it shows at the bottom here on the left the different frames that you need. So you need a frame for the drawing. To place the drawing, I already explained that. The export zone, so it should match at least the laser frame. And then there is a frame for the QR code. So in the QR code, I could copy it, so 6 to copy, and in there I can add different macros. So eventually you need the project name, project number, uh, designer, and eventually we will need the address. So I'm gonna copy this, so 5, and I'm gonna put it in here. I'm gonna place them. Then I need to also, I'm gonna take these and copy 6 in there. So here it's a little bit too big. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna match, right click here, select these guys and middle click. So I just want to make sure they fit into the frame, and then I'm gonna put it here. There we go. So now I can save my title block, my new layout, and then I can test it. So once saved, we can go back to our 3D, press semicolon, right click, it's exporting, and then I can paste the result. So 3 and paste the result here. So, and we see we have our new title block with our QR code. So pretty easy to extract some data and put that in a QR code. Note that also in piece by piece shop drawings, you can have the QR code, so you could add data about the part itself, so including the weight, the machine on which it should be produced, the size of the part, the location where it should be installed, like story, etc. So that can be added in the in the QR code, and it can be also linked with the WebGL. So I think um, that's enough for the semicolon export. Note, by the way, you could also export without a laser frame, and then you can choose the scale and include a title block. Um, so that would be here if I again press Control F6. Here there is one export without laser frame, but it will include or without frames, it will include a title block. Then, yeah, let's do the export colon. There we go. And here the difference, because it's not exporting with a frame, the scale or the layer has to be selected before you insert the drawing. So here I'd like to insert the drawing at a half an inch equals a foot. No, let's do a quarter of an inch equals a foot. And then I press 3 to paste, and there you go. So you see there are no frames. Sometimes you have a large format like a D size or E size, 24 by 36. You want to bring a drawing at a certain scale so you can place multiple drawings on a large format paper. So that's also feasible. Now you see if I click on this, this is indeed at a quarter of an inch equals a foot. So that's the main difference. But otherwise you see that the representation of the model is exactly the same, whether you use colon or semicolon. We also see here that we do not have production numbers. So if we jump and go to export shop drawings, to the export, so without layout, if you click here, we see that on representation, attributes are not exported because here it's not checked. So that's you can have different settings, so different scales. Well, here automatically it's set at a quarter of an inch. Then the label could be different. Here it's not set, and the smoothing, well, here it's not even set either. So two different settings, but it's basically using the same layout file to set the the hatchings and the lines and what we've seen in our layout file here. It's taking the same settings that are on this side of the layout file. It's ignoring, it's not using what you see here on the right. Okay, so let's move forward and let's introduce the export solid. So, and here you see on the image, it shows you uh, there is the export solid is kind of a box. It's a tool that on which you save views and sections. So what you do before in order to add one, we suggest you select the parts that should be attached. So here I'm not attaching again the connector axes and drillings, mainly because I don't want to see those because it's like elevations and axonometric, but obviously you could create one for like details that would work as well. And because it's um, it's quite redundant what you're doing for each project. You're exporting like eventually 4 elevations of the construction, like south, north, east, and west, and some sections. So the export solid enables you to be able to to extract these views really quickly for all your project. So, but it has to be done once. And here I'm going to add an export solid. I'm going to click on automatic. Automatic means it's going to wrap all my active parts together. I'm going to call it cyan, use the cyan color and give it a name. I'll call it axo for axonometric and elevations. There we go, enter. And now we see the box, the export solid, showing up. And then I'm going to pick 3 standard views plus the axonometric. So or I could have all standard views. So standard views are like um, like in X plus and minus X. So 2 views in X, 2 views in Y, 2 views in Z, as well as a few axonometric views. Here I'm just going to pick 3 standard views. So let me show you what it is. It's going to do a view in X, a view in Y, a view in Z, as well as an axonometric. Then I can also add 3 standard sections. So we see now these sections are represented with um, dashed lines. Now it's centered into the box, but I can easily move these. So by clicking on Modify Section, here I can pick the section I'd like to edit. And you see at the very bottom, you have some options. So I could press 5 to move. So 5. And then I can choose where to place it. So I could place it here, for instance, against the post, or I could place it here in the middle, for instance, between this point, or I actually 5M, I should be able to click on the edge, and now it's in the center of that beam. Anyway, we have these sections now and views defined. Now we could also add more views. That's not a problem. Modify. Here, define content. You could add more items or remove some items that you don't want to see. Views and sections. So here you see modify view or modify section, etc., etc. So here, if I click on manual view, I could add a new view. Okay, I guess that's enough for now. I can now go to the export function, export shop drawing, export solid. Here, before we export, we have to set up our export. So I click on the gears, and here all these, I already have a couple more export solids. So I have one called bent and one called elevations and axo. Well, here the one I created is axo and elevations, and we see all the views. So views and sections. Sections are ABC. And now we have 2 pages. So on page 1, we have all the, well, a few views, axonometric and sections. On page 2, we have a section. So and it's actually exported automatically on an 11 by 17. So this could be changed. Obviously, you could have multiple sizes. You could even have without a frame. So let's try without a frame. And I'd like to have only one view per. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. So that's a little bit tricky here because I have too many views. So I need to remove these views. There we go. And here, there we go. So here I have two views on that will be exported on top of each other. I could also change that by selecting this. So here I'm gonna have a view in X and a view in Y. So you simply select the views and drag them in your export. So that would be on page number 2. Um, Here it doesn't really matter. I could add more views. Let's add a couple because I'm gonna export without a frame. So let's add our axonometric. And actually here I could have two axonometric with different settings. So then I'd like to set all these views. I can select them by pressing Control. I can select more. I could press Shift in order to select all of them. And then I can click on the gears here to define how these views should be exported. So here it's exported without a frame, without it won't fit on a page. So the idea is I should define the scale. So here let's export these views at 1/4 of an inch. All these exports will be done with hidden lines with hatching, so pretty much what we've done before. Um, and then you can choose whether it has to cut. So when a part is going through the export solid, this can trigger a cut, and only the portion within the box will be kept. I could explode the model. I could show attributes, uh, end types like mortise, tenons, dovetails can be like visible. So cut counterpart, these are for mortises. And we have some symbols for sections and views. Okay, then we can also set how we want to see drillings and connector axes like bolts, anchor bolts, etc., dowels. MEP, we have some parts called MEP, like axes called MEP that you can also represent. And then under architecture, you can do certain things with walls and like rough walls, rough openings, and roofs and floor panels. Then for sections, since we do not have sections, um, we do not have access to that tab. Then I can click OK, and I can eventually change the setting here. Um, I'd like to explode this view, and I'd like to export it in shaded mode. So let's do the export. On page number 2, I can place a couple sections. So here, and I'm gonna place them side by side. Let's keep that on ledger, and we will be exporting automatically with the scales defined in a list, so imperial scales. Now you see for sections, you can define the like a depth in the background and in the foreground of the um, section. So let's put 12 feet on for both, and let's see what we are going to get. So here I can simply click on Export Solid, right click to confirm, and confirm for the how is it called, the clipboard, and once calculated, you can paste the result. So here we have our 4 views that we set up. Well, here by mistake, I did an exploded view for all of them and changed the, like, exported with in shaded mode, all the views. Now let's look at the sections. So we have A and B. Actually, what I wanted is C. So let's go back to our settings and let's change them. So hidden line with hatchings, we don't want to explode. Actually, the only one I wanted to explode was this one. So shaded and exploded. Now, as far as representation, so we did not look at the all the settings. So we looked at the layout and how to set up the views and representations of the views. But now if we go to the representation tab, we can define how the hatching should be applied. It's applied by material, how the exploded view is computed. Smoothing is not used. Shaded, so we see here white background. We would like to see the textures in this case, and we can choose the resolution. Um, so we have different options here. Label, so here it's, if it's exported, it's going to show the cross section and the name. Scale, that's our list. And we can also include a bill of material when exporting our drawings. So now if we look at the layout file, this is pretty much the same as the semicolon. It has got more options because we have like different views. So here, if we look on the left, we have again settings for lines. Then we have settings for the when exporting lists, drilling description, and also containers and export solid. If you have, you could have export solids within an export solid for, let's say, some details. And then you have symbols for sections. So you can edit these symbols by like moving, stretching the lines and moving the text. And here you have the description of the views and the sections that can be changed as well. Then we have the texts like macros. We already talked about that. We see that we have attributes for export solid. ES stands for export solid, and export solid attributes. And you can include the weight, like quantity, etc. Then when you see here it says cuts, it's actually also what we mean by sections. So visible sections and invisible sections. Then you have hidden lines with hatchings. It can be set as well. Then you have also settings for drillings. So depending on how the drillings should be displayed using nodes or surfaces, if it's a blind hole or if you see the hole, if it's on the side from which you're looking at, logo, and the different frames. Here we have some more frames. We have a frame for the list, so you can place the list in on the page or on a separate page. We actually have an example here where you see a list on a 8.5 by 11. So this export a ledger with list has actually two. It's the export is will be on two pages. One page showing the model, the drawing, and on an 8.5 by 11, you will be getting the bill of material. Okay, and we do have also um, QR codes, QR codes for like also linked with our WebGL. Okay, and because we can export 10 different lists, these are the 10 list outputs. So depending on which one you're exporting to, so that can be found under representation list, and here you see 10 different lists. Okay, so I guess it makes all sense. Now I can export. By the way, the default setting to export to the export of an export solid is F12. So you press F12 and then right click to validate, and now it's exporting again. So here I'm gonna undo add and I'm gonna paste with my latest settings, and now we see that in the end we have an exploded view. So here eventually it's not enough. I could give a different factor. Um, I have my two elevations and two axonometric. We see here the title block for each view. We have the section symbol also displayed, and here we see also our um, sections. So I guess we are done with the shop drawing export. Now we can move to the CLT plugin. So for the CLT plugin, we will obviously focus on CLT, so Control A M, and the CLT plugin can be found at the top here. If you're not finding it, you need to click on Window and check the box called Plugin. Then you can click on the CLT plugin. So these plugins are either in C++ or Python. Both are available. The CLT plugin is divided in different topics. So we have one called Lamina or build-ups. So you can define how your CLT is built, how many layers with the quality, etc. So the goal today is not really to go through this, but it's to add direction arrows. So let's look at the direction arrows by clicking on the settings. I can choose the color of my arrows. I can choose how the a arrowhead is defined. I could have it on one end or both ends or only at the end of the arrow. I can choose the size. I can choose on what face it should be added. So the reference here, I know that the thickness of all my panels is the thickness is going up. So I know that by selecting the reference, the direction arrow will be at the top. But you could also have the arrows placed on both faces at the same time. Then you have four different styles. so type of arrows that you can choose from, and then you can choose whether these arrows should be lines, if they should trigger a marking, or if they should be defined as a volume with a certain size, like width and depth, and if these volumes have to cut the panel and then be deleted. So here I'm just going to use create a line with marking, and then OK. Then now let's say these panels, I want them to be like along the length axis. So you simply click on add, and it adds these arrows along the length axis. Let's say for these panels, I want the arrows to go across. So you click on add across, and there you go. So as simple as that. Then the next topic is the hoisting. So let's look at the settings. So hoisting, you can hoist walls, and you can hoist like panels that are not vertical like walls. So here it says flat, but it's actually for roof, it works as well. So for walls, I'm not gonna demonstrate that, but you have two options to lift wall panels. You can lift them from the top edge or from the side. So uh, typically from the side, you would drill some holes to drive a sling through in order to lift them. Then you can set a top distance. So if it's on the side, you can set the hole at a certain distance from the top edge. You can set the hole diameter. You could even have a pilot hole. So when it's from the top, you could have a milling plus like a screw, a lag screw or a lag bolt to lift, to use to lift. Here we don't have to specify a pilot in this case. Then you can set the depth of the hole for the pilot as well eventually. And here you have options to combine, to have just a hole, only a pilot, or a milling and a pilot, or which can be like also you can extract a bill of material to find out how many of these of screws you will need. Um, okay, well the rest, by the way, it's calculating the location of your hoisting uh, of the lifting points, and it takes into account the center of gravity. So that's important, and the shape of the panel in order to calculate that center of gravity. Now let's move to the flat panels, horizontal or at an angle, but not vertical again. Here we have two options. We have a single uh, like lifting hole or lifting location, or a double. So in some cases, for each hoisting point, you need two holes in order to drive a sling through the two holes, or you have double, single, but single means it's a single point. And for a single point, you can combine a hole, a milling, with a pilot. So this is what typically we like to do. Have a milling in order for the screw or the lag head to be under the surface of the panel. So here it's pretty, so here for the edge distance, that's only when you have two holes, so double. In single, there is no need. Um, then you have for the milling and the pilot, you need two values, so the hole diameter and the depth. So you see hole depth, so 1.5 inch in diameter, same for the depth. And it's a distance. You could also have a ratio So if it has to go through, it would be 100%. Um, then the pilot depth is 6 inches, so it's going to add an item that is 6-inch long. And then that's the combination we will need. The name of the item, so it's going to add drilling axes. So the the axis representing the hole or the milling will be called milling, so you can assign names as well. And then you can use an attribute in order to group these guys into a common attribute. So the group will be called hoisting. You could also use a user attribute. So here you see attribute, and then you have basically two attributes that you could set when adding these. Then you have the location of these hoisting points. So you could set the distance from the center of gravity, or you could use a ratio. So it's going to be 70% of the length. Um, so it's going to be from about 35% on each side of the center of gravity. So when you like measure the distance between the two hoisting points, it's going to be 70% of the overall length of the panel. Then same thing for the width, and then you can set the color. Then you can also save the settings, because you might be willing to use different tools to lift these panels. So anyway, once you're done, you click OK, and now you have different options. You can add a single lifting point, a double, a triple, and a quadruple. Now, something interesting, typically the hoisting is linked with the weight that has to be lifted. And here what you can do, if you click on the gears here for the attributes display, instead of the production numbers, what you could display is the real weight of the panel. That can be pretty helpful. So here, if I display the weight, I also have here in the CLT plugin, I can activate by weight. And I can say, okay, anything that is bigger than 5,000 pounds should get 4 hoisting points. So I click close. These guys are selected, and I click on flat quadruple. And now it's adding the drillings, and we see here this is the milling, and here this is the screw. So I can count them, Control A N for name, and I see that I have 20 screws that I will need to hoist these panels. Now let's say activate by weight, less than 5,000 pounds, inclusive 5,000. There we go, close. And for them, I need 3 lifting points. So now you see they are added automatically. There we go. So I guess you understand how the hoisting works. Then for the labels, that's another feature um, you can use to print labels for CLT or even for glulam. Um, and it's gonna each part can get a different label and a different QR code. And typically we like to use the assembly number. So I already demonstrated how you can use the how you can assign assembly numbers, but you can also use a user attribute uh, in order to export labels. And the nice thing is, well, you've got to use the piece by piece shop drawing export, so you have to set it up properly. create a layout, and then you're able to export labels. Anyway, I hope you will enjoy practicing with what I showed you today, and I look forward to seeing you in another session.